Hello and welcome back to Parc Fermé Parlay with Kieran Downey. We are here today to go through our thoughts and feelings on all 10 liveries for the 2025 season. We obviously had the big reveal, the big launch night at F175 in London, which I have to say, my thoughts on it are twofold. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I didn't think it was as cringe as I expected it to be. I think it was great as a one-off event, and I enjoyed it a lot more than the sort of traditional livery launches that we get, but I missed understanding more about the cars. What we've went from is like an hour-long reveal where we see the car, we speak to team principals and the drivers and everything like that, and we really get their thoughts and their feelings and a little bit about the car and how the team's feeling going into the season. And I understand that these can be quite boring for a lot of people, especially when we get a whole big press release and having to sit and read through all of that. So it was nice that we had this big high energy event, but I missed hearing from the drivers and the team principals in such in more depth. Everything just went really quickly. It felt like we got the car on the stage and then it was done. The car came on, both the drivers and the team principal made an appearance, and then it was like, oh, a quick couple of sentences from each, and then it was, right, here we go, we're on to the next one. And I know that each team had their own sort of videos and everything to sort of tease the build up to the release of the cars, the reveal of the cars. And I think what left a slightly sour note in a sour taste in my mouth was that some teams had utilized their 7 minutes way better than others. I did enjoy it. It did leave me wanting more, and I'm glad that some of the teams have done shakedowns and everything with their cars so that we could see a little bit more, because it just sort of came and went like that. It was a very quick couple of hours. I think Jack Whitehall did a pretty decent job. I was very skeptical of it being Jack Whitehall when he was announced. I wasn't that keen. I also wasn't that keen on the musical performers. Like, listen, Machine Gun Kelly did fine. That Kane, he also did fine. The DJ, I didn't realise that the DJ they had was actually the one that was revealing Alpine's livery, so that was a bit of a weird one, especially when Aston Martin had Thames, but nobody knew she was going to be coming onto the stage. It was very bizarre. I didn't even realise that he was the composer of the F1 theme song. It was a lot. The entertainment was by far the worst parts of the evening. When Take That came out to close the show, I wanted the ground to swallow me up. I was embarrassed and it was cringy. Like, that was the best in British entertainment that you could find for that. They're not relevant anymore. And F1's really trying to capture a younger audience, and that's why we're doing these big things like the F175 event. And the best in British music you could get was Take That. Like, I just don't understand it. Even Silverstone, like the Silverstone British GP, they've just announced their musical performers, and they have like Sam Fender, they have Ray, like they have big names. And for your launch event, you got to, it's a choice. All right, moving on to our thoughts on all of the liveries. Now, we're not going to talk about them as they appeared on stage throughout the event. We're going to talk about them in the sort of order from least favourite to favourite. And we are actually going to kick things off with the first team to reveal their livery, which was Sauber. Now, I actually liked last year's car. It stood out on the track, and 2024 was a year where we had a lot of carbon fibre on show, like a lot. And what was really cool was we had this team that had this bright, a little bit garish livery that really stood out on track, and it was bold, and you know, it was completely different to everything else we were seeing in a year of fairly muted liveries. This year's design is a lot simpler and way less complex. It is this sort of neon green, which I'm glad we've kept for the final year before we transition into whatever Audi's sort of team colours will be. But this sort of neon green, and it fades into sort of a gradient effect into what should be black, I'm assuming, because in the official renders and photos of the car that have been released from the team, it is this green that transitions very cleanly into a black. When it was revealed on the night, it's way less cleaner and a lot messier. The gradient from the green to the black is so misaligned. The black is actually a grey, so it doesn't even fit in and blend in nicely with the carbon fibre that's on show. I think it looks incredibly lazy. It looks very, very cheap, and by far the worst livery we have on track this year. It is awful. I can't escape the feeling that it looks like Floviz paint. Like, it looks like we've got a black car and they've chucked some Floviz paint on it to go and do a testing session. I can't escape it. It just looks awful. The race suits are nice. I don't mind the race suits, but the livery is atrocious. All right, next up, I've gone with Williams. Now, when I seen it at the O2, I was incredibly disappointed because I actually thought that it was just all one colour. And it looked incredibly one-dimensional and it looked incredibly flat. It didn't stand out at all. Then when I looked at the official renders, I've noticed that it is like a darker shade of blue, and it, you know, again, similar to Cyber, it fades into a lighter shade of blue. It's a very subtle transition that I just didn't notice when it was shown to us at the O2. I think it looks a lot tidier than last year's car. Last year's car was incredibly messy, and I do think it's a lot simpler, but it's a lot cleaner, it's a lot tidier. As much as it's a lot tidier than last year's car, it's very simplistic and it's very uninspiring. Like, pop off Kings, give us nothing. Williams also has a new title sponsor. It is Atlassian, so the team is officially Atlassian Williams Racing. Not that that's going to really affect anyone, we're all still going to call them Williams. The new tone of blue seems to be coming from the new sponsor, Atlassian. The logo's there, it is fairly prominent, but it's not overbearing. It's nice to see a decent amount of sponsors back at the Williams car. It seems like a positive change that's coming. James Vowles seems to be working his magic. They also got quite a fair influx of sponsors from signing Carlos Sainz. It's an incredibly simplistic, incredibly uninspiring, a little bit one-dimensional livery, and it's just a bit boring, I have to say. I've seen it, it looks flat and it looks boring, so I can't really put it any higher because it's just dull. However, it is a markable improvement on last year's car, so there is that. All right, coming in at number 8, I've gone with Mercedes. It is a quite classic Mercedes livery. They've retained the silver and black from last year, which I'm not mad at because we all really enjoyed last year's livery. It is a little bit duller this year, I would say. We've lost the sort of bright red Ineos presence on the airbox. Like last year it had that bright red airbox. It's now just plain black. The blue, the turquoise of the Petronas branding has been increased. It's been scaled up, which is nice. The car looks good. It looks complete, which some of the other cars don't. I do think that it will sort of fade into the background on track. I think when we see it from certain angles, it will look quite stand out because that silver branding on the nose cone looks as if it's an all silver car, but at certain angles I think it will just look a bit lost, especially when this year we've got some quite bright, colourful, bold liveries. I don't feel like I could put it any higher. As I said, it is a complete livery and it is a very classic Mercedes livery, but it is very similar to last year's, and this sends something that has bugged me when I was watching this event from Mercedes, from McLaren, from Red Bull, that they all just did a fairly similar livery to last year, and we've done this huge event to reveal these cars for the 75th year of F1, and they pretty much wheeled the exact same cars out on track. Or same livery design, sorry, because the cars are slightly different. It's classic, it's, you know, it's Mercedes. I do feel like it is going to be a little bit more difficult to spot which driver it is because last year you could tell with the sort of neon, they had the little details that fitted in for each driver. Lewis's had that sort of yellowy neon on it. George had that sort of bluey neon. Now it is just silver and black. So I do think it'll be a little bit more difficult to spot which driver. But it's a fine car. It's a fine car. The one bit that I was so embarrassed for them when it happened. They wheeled the car out on track and they did this like pit stop moment where they changed the tires on the car, and one of the guys just couldn't get the wheel off the car, and it was clunky and it was dodgy and it was embarrassing and cringy. And I just, at that point again, I was like, I just want the ground to swallow me up. So yeah, they lost some points for that. All right, coming in at number 7, I've gone Aston Martin. I think they had the best reveal of the night, to be honest with you. The orchestra was amazing. Thames singing was amazing. The 007 of it all was amazing. It had such emotion and feeling, and by far my favourite reveal of the night. I would say in terms of their livery, a fairly predictable livery for Aston Martin, not straying too far from what we've seen before. They have stripped a lot of the paint off for 2025, so there is a lot more carbon fibre on show, which is a point of contention for me because I think I was just so bored last year with the amount of carbon fibre we were seeing on the cars that I'm disappointed to be continuing that, but I'm kind of all right with it this year because some of the other teams have gone so bold with their concepts. Car looks overall a lot darker, that sort of shade of racing green. It is very distinctively Aston Martin, but it just seems the whole scheme of the car seems a lot darker. There is an increase in that sort of punchy chartreuse colour, which is nice, and it acts almost like a dividing line between the black carbon fibre and the Aston Martin racing green, which is nice. It's nice to see that. Another nice bit of contrast is the silver airbox. I think that does look quite nice. It doesn't look as out of place as I originally thought it did when I've sort of gone back and looked at it more. And I have to say, I think it is the classiest car on the grid by far. It is Aston Martin through and through, and it is a very nice looking car, I have to say. I don't think it is lesser than any of the cars I've put in front until we sort of get towards the top, because the next sort of Mercedes, Aston, Red Bull, McLaren stuff, because they've all done such similar looking cars, in terms of the actual difference of where they position, it's not actually that much. It's not like a big leap. It is just slightly personal preference for myself. It is a gorgeous looking livery. All right, coming in at 6, I've put Red Bull. Now, this is another team that has gone very classic. It is a classic Red Bull livery that we have seen 9 years on the trot, maybe 10 years on the trot. It is a bit boring. Listen, the branding is strong. It is instantly recognizable as Red Bull. Like, you're never going to mistake it for another car, let's be honest. However, it is pretty much nearly identical to last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. Like, honestly, for about 9 years, we've had pretty much the exact same livery from Red Bull. And I find it really ironic that they've wheeled out a near identical livery to last year when their whole video that they had before they revealed the car was a creative, albeit quite lengthy, tribute saluting how UK custom car culture is such a great display of personal expression. And then we got a nearly identical livery to last year. It is a great livery, but as I said, it's been about 9-10 years of the same thing, and it is getting a little bit boring. For a team that was historically F1's most disruptive team, like they were the ones that came in and really shook things up. They were the bold ones that were landing Formula One cars on top of helipads, and they were just overall doing mad shit, and they were, blaring music in the paddock, and they were doing crazy liveries. Like, remember the Star Wars livery, and all the pit crew were stormtroopers, and they just did so many cool things. They've now probably become one of the more predictable teams, which is quite wild because, as I said, they were the most disruptive. And I've been to their factory twice now, and they talk about how they are this disruptive and bold and daring team, and a lot of what they do is, but they've become quite predictable, and I think this livery just shows that they have become predictable and it is almost quite boring. I don't know whether with the huge regulation change in 26, whether we might see something a bit different, but for 25, I'm bored. I do kind of wish that we would have heard from Max. Like, we heard from all the other drivers and all the other teams, and we just didn't hear anything from Max and Liam. And to be fair, looking back, it's probably a wise decision with the whole booing and everything, but I do think it would have been quite nice to hear from Max as the reigning world champion. But I understand why the team have chosen not to let him speak. I also just, my last bit on this is I found them coming out on stage and the whole dancing to be incredibly cringy, and you could tell that Max Verstappen just didn't want to be there. It was clear as day. He is such an introvert, and that is an introvert's worst nightmare. Liam Lawson looked actually quite good. I'm a fan of the new haircut. What was he wearing on that red carpet? Why has he showed up in a shacket and jeans? Like, everyone else wore some kind of blazer and shirt or suit. He stuck out like a sore thumb. Coming in at number 5, I've gone with McLaren. Now, there are very few changes to the livery this year. In fact, there is pretty much 0 changes. I have to say McLaren do a very good job at sponsor integration. Everything is incredibly thought out, and considering the amount of sponsors McLaren has, they do an incredible job at not making it seem overwhelming. Now, the only reason I've put it middle of the road and not any lower is because I actually really like the livery. I really liked it last year when we seen it, and I really do like it this year. The reason I'm not putting it any higher is because it's the exact same livery. Nothing has changed. It's the same as Red Bull, the same as Aston Martin, kind of the same as Mercedes. We do these big events to reveal these liveries, and it is disappointing that it is the exact same. Now, I understand why they've done it. The team sort of put out a bit of a statement, and they say that when you think of these iconic McLaren liveries, they've had these iconic liveries that run for a couple of years with slight changes and tweaks. Think of the chrome McLaren, the red and white McLaren from years and years ago, and that with last year's car and last year's livery, with that being a constructor winning livery, they feel like this is a new era for McLaren, and that's why they wanted it to be a continuation and not a complete redo. As much as I understand that, and I think, yeah, do you know what? Fair play. I think because so many teams have kept their liveries so similar, it just makes it boring for me, to be quite frank. I did love their reveal where they sort of had in a row each of the iconic McLarens, and it was, you know, the red and white McLaren, as I said, the chrome McLaren, and then right at the end was the 2025. But that build-up was so exciting because it was all of these iconic cars, and it really hyped everybody up, and then it was bang, the exact same car as previous when they whipped the sheet off it. I'll also say, why was Zach Brown and Andrea Stella in their team kits on that stage? Why? They don't. It's not a good look, to be quite frank. I understand, you know, rep the team, but every other team principal and everything stepped onto that stage in a suit and looked smart and everything like that. And like 100%, the drivers should be in their race suits. There was no need for Zach Brown and Andrea Stella to be slipping their trainers on and their polos. It stuck out. They looked far too casual. Far too casual. For the constructors, champions, the last ones of the night, it was just all incredibly underwhelming. The whole thing, I was like, between the livery being the exact same and those two rocking out on stage in their polos, I was like, really? Really? Anyway, I look forward to the one-off liveries that McLaren do this year, because last year's, that's where they really shined. They do incredible one-off liveries. So I'm looking forward to that. It's a shame the car's the same, but we move. It is still a very good livery. I still really like it. I just wanted something a bit different, but there we are. All right, coming in at number 4, I've gone for Haas. Now, we are a decade of Haas liveries now, and the 10th edition doesn't really stray too far from anything that we've seen before. I will say that I think this one is far more eye-catching. The addition of so much white really makes it stand out on track, and it's a huge improvement from last season. The red accents look great. It just all really works. It's a very well thought out design, I have to say. It's bold, it's interesting. I think it deserves praise. I think that the livery does a great job accentuating the shape of the car. It's a very good effort from Haas. It's a very, very good effort, and I just hope that it performs on track. I will say that when we spoke about the liveries last time, and I was saying how Haas was actually doing a shakedown, I think at Silverstone, and I was like, oh, like, you know, that livery is not going to be what we see at the O2. It was, because they basically leaked their livery by accident, or maybe not by accident, but they leaked their own livery. I really liked it. I was a big fan. So, yeah, good. It was a good showing for Haas, and I really like their race suits this year. I really, really like their race suits. So, well done, Haas. Hopefully, we don't have a very nice looking car just chilling at the back of the pack. Hopefully we can get some decent points. All right, coming in at number 3, and this one might be a bit controversial for a lot of people, but I've gone for Ferrari. Now, when they first revealed the car, I didn't like it. I thought the white was ugly, I thought it was incredibly forced, and I kind of shut off from it and thought, you know, they've given us such a lovely colour of red this year, the race suits look so good, and the livery is really ugly. But now, actually, having spent a good few days with it and really sort of digested it, I think Ferrari's played an absolute blinder. I think they've played an absolute blinder. Listen, that HP logo is a bone of contention across whether you're a Ferrari fan or not. You probably think it looks incredibly ugly. And to be honest with you, I agree. And listen, it's always going to be incredibly hard to incorporate on a car that is red. But that is the way the cookie crumbles. Unfortunately, it has to be that blue. I've seen loads of people do, if I was the Ferrari car designer, I would have done this, and look how good this is. And it just completely changes the HP logo to something that it's not. It either changes the colours or it puts it back to an old logo from years and years and years ago that's not HP branding. HP is the title sponsor of Ferrari. They pay an incredible amount of money, and because of that amount of money that they pay, they can dictate what happens with their logo. If they want their logo to be bright blue on that red car, that is up to them. We just all have to suck it up. I think what the designers in Maranello have done is be able to have that HP logo on there and make it look far less garish. The white stripe is a perfect way to incorporate that HP logo so that it doesn't stick out so much. I think they've done a very good job at incorporating all these different elements and not having the car look a mess. That shade of red is also gorgeous and it works wonders. As I said, the HP logo looks less garish. I have seen the photo with somebody photoshopping the white stripe to look like paper coming out a printer, and I think the caption was, "Box, box, Lewis, you're out of ink." I have to admit that's incredibly funny, but I do actually think the designers in Maranello have done a brilliant job. The one bit that I do think sticks out and why they're not further up the list is that rear wing. It's hideous. It's so hideous. I do miss the gorgeous black Ferrari rear wing. Again, HP pay a lot of money. We are just going to have to stick with it. But I think they've done an absolutely cracking job with the car this year. The one bit that did catch my eye, though, throughout the whole thing was the actual design of the rear wing. It looks markedly different to anything we've seen before, and it is very interesting to me that Haas also have gone for the same sort of design, and they both share the same wind tunnel. Something to think about, perhaps. But it was very exciting to see the car out on track in Fiorano the next day, and I'm hoping for a very good year for Ferrari. If you watched my prediction video, you will know that I have got them for winning the constructors. I do have Lando Norris for winning the drivers, but part of me thinks it could be Charles Leclerc. But it's like if I don't put it out into the world, It can't not happen. All right, coming in at number 2, my second favourite livery across all 10 teams, and it's VCarb. Did you know their name was VCarb? Visa Cash App RB? Did you know that? Did you? Because we're going to remind you about 12 million times. Anyway, I really like the VCarb for this year. It is, I think we were so fed last year with just all black carbon cars, not a good thing by the way, that we get one white car and it's suddenly the greatest thing we've ever seen. Call them whatever you want, Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, RB, VCarb, whatever it is. They have had a long history of cleverly reinterpreting the Red Bull identity. They've always done a very good job of designing these cars so that they fit within the Red Bull family, but they are more than just that sort of sister or junior team, if that makes any sense. What I will say is for 2025, although we've sort of really flipped the primary colour to white, which is something I wasn't really expecting, to be quite honest. I thought we would still stick with that sort of bluish colour, but this livery is the most Red Bull branded interpretation that we've seen in quite a while, if not ever, and it draws it so close to the bigger sibling, the parent team, if you will. It actually looks like it could be a one-off Red Bull livery. In fact, it actually looks exactly like Red Bull's 2021 livery for the Turkish GP, which was a one-off special. They look so similar. After their reveal of the race suits, I was actually expecting more to be made of that sort of Visa Cash App apple green that features quite prominently on the race suits, and that we would get a sort of blue-green combo. And I kind of thought that it would be a bit more playful, a bit more colourful, but the team have obviously decided to align themselves more with Red Bull, and if they had gone for that more colourful approach, it would have clashed and probably been a lot further down the list. So I do think it's quite smart that they've went for the white. And when they first revealed it, I actually really didn't like it because, again, it did look quite flat. But the more I've looked at it and sort of digested it, the more I'm actually a fan of it. And it's actually very close to being number 1, but it is too close to something we've already seen. It doesn't feel like, it feels like a Red Bull car, and there is certain things that feel like it's been taken from other teams, like that blue, the sort of blue bull at the back of the car feels very similar to how Mercedes has used the sort of the silver arrows motif in the past, and that sort of design on the back. So it feels like a one-off livery. It looks beautiful out on track, and I'm sure that we're all going to love it, but I do think that there is quite a few things that take away from it being as impressive as what it seems to be. All right, and our final livery of 2025, my favourite livery that was revealed, and that is Alpine. Now, after the debacle last year of them teasing a camel livery and then us getting nearly a full carbon car with highlights of pink and highlights of blue, it was really nice to see Alpine do something that was bold and colourful and really give us what we wanted, because we wanted something that was pink or blue or just any colour, please. I'm so glad to see that they've really leaned into the BWT, their sponsors branding, which is that bright bubblegum pink, and it demands our attention, and it certainly got it. It draws your eye to them instead of the rest of the pack because it is so bold and colourful and bright. It looks shiny, it just looks stunning. I have to say, it's a beautiful livery. I understand why they don't go full in on the pink, because I think if they did, it would be compared to Force India's BWT era. However, I think that what they've managed to do overall is really utilise the colour palette properly, because they've done an incredible job here. That glossy metallic blue finish looks sharp, clean, elegant, fun. It will stand out day or night. Imagine that blue under the lights in Singapore or Saudi Arabia or Vegas. It'll look amazing, but it'll also look amazing out on track in the daylight. Like, it'll just look stunning wherever we go. I do think that this will be quite a divisive livery. I think some people will love it, some people won't. But I have to say that I think what Alpine has done better than any other team is blending their brand and identity with that of their sponsors, and it not coming off messy or garish or anything like that. And they've actually managed to provide a design that is genuinely refreshing and quite bold, and that for me is why it gets the top spot. An incredible car design. So well done to the guys at Alpine. The reveal was weird. The DJ started playing and I was like, who is this guy? Turns out he was actually one of the performers, and he is the composer of the Formula One theme song. Who'd have thought that? I do kind of wish that the race suits fit in more with the branding on the car. The pink kind of just cuts off a bit of a weird place, I think, and it'd be cool if we had like an all pink and blue kind of vibe for the race suits, but I'm happy that we've just got a really decent livery. I do feel really bad for Jack Doohan. They had basically done a whole day of press before the launch event, and the Alpine press officer had to step in and tell them that, basically say to Jack, do not answer any more questions about Colapinto, and said to the press, we've had 3 questions about Colapinto now, it is time to move on, no more questions. So I did feel quite bad for him. Very tense. A lot of them were reporting it was very awkward and very tense in the room when that happened. So I feel a little bit bad for doing there. But that is it. That is our reaction to all the liveries. As I said, I did enjoy F175. I don't think I would enjoy it as much if it was a yearly event. I do think that there is elements that they could take, that they could incorporate into something if they want to do these big launch events every year. But I really just missed having a bit of time with each of the teams to really sort of flesh out and explore their challenger for 2025 and why they chose the way the designs and what they've done and what's different and their hopes and everything like that for the year. It just all felt incredibly rushed, and they've only got a certain amount of time to be able to do it because they'll just lose the interest of everyone. But it just felt like, oh, there's a car, oh, it's gone again. So yeah, that's my biggest criticism, I have to say, of the whole night. But yeah, that is our feelings on all the liveries. Obviously coming in at number 10, Sauber, 9, Williams, 8, Mercedes, 7, Aston Martin. Then we've got Red Bull at 6, McLaren at 5. Coming in at number 4 is Haas. Then coming in at number 3, we've got Ferrari, number 2, RB, and taking the top spot is Alpine with a very cool livery. But that is everything from us just now. We'll be back very soon to discuss all of the goings on from our 3 days of testing in Bahrain. Yep, that's right. Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, we will see these cars out on track. Testing is a bit of an odd one because it can be quite boring for a lot of the fans because there's no real action and it's just the teams gathering data. But there will be plenty for us to talk about. It is always very cool seeing these cars on track. So we'll be back next week, or later on this week, should I say, with a breakdown of everything that was happening during the 3 days at testing. But thank you very much. Let us know in the comments what you think of the 2025 liveries. And as I said, we'll be back very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. I love you. Bye.